Welcome, everybody, to Bible Bites, where we are reading through the Bible one small bite at a time. I'm Pastor Dan, and today we're going to pick up in Matthew 11, starting with verse 7. Last week we left off with Jesus engaging in conversation with John the Baptist's disciples. So keep that in mind as we begin this passage. As they went away, meaning as John the Baptist's disciples went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds concerning John or regarding John. What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind? So this means someone that is easily blown about by culture. His mind is easily swayed. What then did you go out to see? A man dressed in soft clothing, meaning lavish, nice clothing. Behold, those who wear soft clothing are in kings' houses. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is he of whom it is written, Behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way before you. That is a prophecy from Malachi chapter 3, verse 1. You can read that in the prophet's book, actually called Malachi. So Jesus is just trying to get the crowds to really think about who John is, what he was. And he was a prophet, but even more so. Let's keep going here in verse 11. Truly I say to you, among those born of women, there has risen no one greater than John the Baptist, yet the one who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. So among men here on earth, John is considered the greatest. John gave up all things, really. He gave up all the comforts of the world to do the task which God had given him, to prepare the way for the coming of Jesus, to really prepare the way for the kingdom of God to be made manifest in a whole new way through Jesus Christ. So John, even though he was so great on this earth, still Jesus says those in the kingdom of heaven, those who inherit God's reign beyond just the physical, they're going to be even greater than John. So there's a bit of a comparison there between just the life that we live now and what the promises that we have through Jesus Christ. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence, and the violent take it by force. This can be a hard saying, but Jesus is still talking about John the Baptist in his ministry. So from the days of John until now, so when John started preaching, we're probably not looking at more than a couple years here at the very most. And he says that the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence. Many were very attracted to the message John shared. And many were coming out of their cities, coming into the countryside to hear John speak, to be baptized by him. And at the same time, the Pharisees wanted to be part of this significant event, though they weren't truly receiving what John said. So I think we're talking here about the stir, the commotion in one sense that is happening as John is pointing to Jesus, as John is preparing the way for the Messiah, for Jesus to come. I think that is what we're talking about. It says the violent take it by force. I don't know if violence here really is referring to those that are zealous, those that are eager. Jesus said that many of the people that we might think would not inherit the kingdom of God were actually inheriting the kingdom of God ahead of even the religious leaders. So harlots and tax collectors and other scoundrels, they were hearing the message of John and they were eager. They were responding. They were being baptized. And I think this is what Jesus is talking about, because he is talking about the ministry of John and how people are responding to John's message, to the coming of the kingdom of heaven, to John beginning to preach the kingdom of heaven. And we know that the scriptures say that John did preach the message of the kingdom of heaven. For all the prophets in the law prophesied until John. And if you are willing to accept it, he is Elijah who is to come. So Elijah was a prophet in the Old Testament, very famous prophet, performed lots of miracles. And John comes in the same spirit as Elijah. He is making a stir, making a scene, doing, his message is very great, causing many to take notice. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. But to who shall I compare this generation? It's like children sitting in the marketplace and calling to their playmates. We played the flute for you, you did not dance. We sang a dirge, and you did not mourn. So Jesus is saying, listen, this generation, they are doing they're expecting everyone else to follow the same things that they're doing. So they want the culture, this generation wants everybody to do, again, exactly what they're doing, to follow in the same ways that they're going. But John was different than that, right? He was preaching a different message, a message that actually went against the culture and the generation of that day. It went against what was normal and what was thought actually appropriate and good. And again, creating a huge stir. So the generation's playing the flute, but John wasn't dancing, right? He didn't go along with the culture of his day. He was very different in that way. And Jesus says, for John came neither eating nor drinking. So John's ministry was out in the wilderness. He did not live lavish lifestyle. He certainly didn't accumulate money. Very different. And he says, so people see John and they say he has a demon. And he says, but the Son of Man, meaning Jesus himself, came eating and drinking, but they say, look at him. He's a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is justified by her deeds. So the culture is looking, right, at Jesus and John, and it doesn't matter what they do, whether they do some of the things that the culture does, which Jesus did. But John, not so much. And so, but it doesn't matter, because the culture is still pointing to them and saying they are of darkness. They are not of God. And so that was the issue. And Jesus would go on then to talk about, we're not going to read these passages, but he would go on to talk about those that are unrepentant. And he talks about whole cities that are unrepentant. So, hopefully that helps you understand today Jesus' words. These words could be, I think, a little difficult, hard to truly understand in their context. We will catch you next week. See you then.